But first, I watched in despair this week as Pope Francis told an interfaith gathering in Singapore that the Christian faith was just one of many roads to God. He said, through an interpreter, it doesn't matter if you're Sikh or Muslim or Hindu or Christian, it's all the same thing and it's all good. Have a listen.
One of the things that struck me about all of you here is your ability to engage in interreligious dialogue. And this is very important because if we start to fight amongst ourselves and saying, my religion is more important than yours, my religion is true, yours is not, where will that lead us? Because every religion is a way to arrive at God. There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God.
Is the Pope Catholic? All of a sudden, that's not a rhetorical question. Some saw it as a wonderful admission that we're all right in our own way. Others saw it as a humble confession that none of us can claim to be right. But most, and I suspect the Pontiff himself, saw it as a way of being inclusive. Ah, yes, inclusiveness. It's become the #1 priority in our culture.
Identity, belonging, representation, connection, inclusion.
Around inclusion.
The next chapter of inclusion.
Inclusion and equity.
All very good, but to be inclusive, you have to include people around something. Our culture, having given up on truth, is trying to include people around inclusion. And without shared values, thanks to decades of multiculturalism, we're trying to create social cohesion around a shared desire for social cohesion. It's a fool's errand because none of it makes sense. In order to be inclusive, the Pope told those assembled that no one should say their religion was more important or truer than anyone else's. Well, if you have to deny truth in order to be inclusive, then how valuable is that inclusion? If inclusion is based on a denial of the truth, then aren't you including people in a lie? And if inclusion is only made possible by inviting everyone to close their eyes to reality, then aren't you seeking to include everyone in a kind of insanity? The Western world is in crisis right now. Yes, inflation and housing and energy and security, the cost of living, all of those things are enormous challenges. But the greatest crisis we're facing is one of reality and of meaning. In the Western world, we're now so confused, we dare not say for sure what a woman is.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word.
The US Supreme Court nominee was not alone in her confusion. Remember Australia's one-time Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy?
Can someone please provide me with a definition of what a woman is? Department of Health. Definition of a man, definition of a woman. Anyone?
It's pretty basic.
It's basic stuff. Professor Murphy.
I think there are a variety of definitions, and I think
just a simple one.
Perhaps to give a more fulsome answer, we should take that on notice.
You're going to take on notice the question of what a woman is.
No, well, there are variety. It's a very contested space at the moment.
We are now so befuddled that we boast there are dozens of genders and new ones appearing all the time.
How many genders are there?
Infinite.
Infinite?
I think there are infinite genders.
Why do you say that?
Because I think, I don't know, you can't put things in boundaries. You can define yourself as whatever you want, and I don't have a number for it, so it's infinite for me. Yeah.
What do you identify as?
I identify as female.
I identify as male. How many genders are there?
God, I don't know. Like, I identify as a guy, but if someone's going to be happy or not following that binary thing, do you?
How many genders are there?
There's a spectrum of genders, you can't really say.
Like an unlimited amount, you would say?
Yeah. Seriously, we're a society that's producing guided missiles and misguided men. We can fire rockets to the stars. We just can't say with any certainty which way is up. Heck, we can't even look down in the shower and say for certain we know what any of it means. Have a listen to leader of the Liberal Democrats in the UK, Sir Edward Davey.
Can a woman have a penis?
Well, I've just answered that question.
They can.
Listen, I've made it really clear that if people, the vast majority of people will have the same gender as their biological sex, but a small number won't.
So a woman can have a penis?
Well, quite clearly.
Hollywood celebrities no longer talk about truth except as it relates to themselves. The only truth they acknowledge is my truth, which may be the opposite of your truth. But if you and I are saying opposite things, how can they both be true? Politicians, taking their cues from culture as they have always done, have given up talking about truth and falsehoods. Instead, they speak of misinformation and disinformation, the ultimate in subjective terms, which they now seek to enshrine into law.
Combating seriously harmful mis and disinformation.
Misinformation and disinformation.
We've seen where misinformation takes hold, it can spread like wildfire.
So we increasingly have laws that are entirely subjective because, having done away with objective truth, well, subjectivity is all we have left. If a man feels like he's a woman, then most of our state governments will readily change his birth certificate to reflect his feelings. And who's anyone to argue? China and Russia and Iran and North Korea may well be threats, but the greatest existential threat facing the Western world is the abandonment of truth. When everything, even the laws of the land, are subjective, then the only way to determine what is right is through might. Having denied any reality beyond our own feelings, which, let's face it, aren't always reliable, there's no authority beyond ourselves to whom we can appeal. And so to ensure inclusion and social cohesion, the government benevolently steps in. State control tightens, and bureaucratic tribunals are given the power to rule on everything we say and even on what we think. There are unserious politicians in the UK, the country that gave the world the Magna Carta, who now seriously believe the state should be able to prosecute citizens for praying in their heads if those private thoughts violate the state's ideals.
Are you standing here part of the protest?
No. I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions?
Professing to be wise, we've become fools. We are the sailor who, having given up on trying to navigate by the stars because, well, he feels that's too arbitrary, he decided to tie his lamp to his ship's mast and navigate by that. It is, of course, only a matter of time before he'll crash into the rocks, and even then, he'll be completely clueless as to why he ran aground. No doubt lawyers will find someone he can sue, and the compensation payout will enable him to buy a bigger boat so he can do it all over again and again and again. The only hope for our sailor, who of course is a metaphor for Western culture, which is another way of saying you and I, is that he once again places his trust in the heavens. But how can men rediscover truth and reality when even the Pope seems to have given up on believing in God?